In the dream time, a terrible drought swept across the land. The leaves of the trees turned brown and fell from the branches, the flowers drooped their heads and died, and the green grass withered as though the spirit from the barren mountain had breathed upon it with the breath of fire. When the hot wind blew, the dead reeds rattled in the river bed, and the burning sand shimmered like a silver lagoon. All the water had left the rippling creeks and deep still water holes. In the clear blue sky the sun was a mass of molten gold. The clouds no longer drifted across the hills, and the only darkness that fell across the land was the shadow of night and death. After many had died of thirst, all the animals in the land met together in a great council to discover the cause of the drought. They traveled many miles. Some came from the bush and others from the distant mountains. The seabirds left their homes in the cliffs where the white surf thundered and flew without resting many days and nights. When they all arrived at the chosen meeting place in Central Australia, they discovered that a frog of enormous size had swallowed all the water in the land and thus caused the drought. Boomerangs were useless and spears bounced off his side, and getting angry didn't help, even though they tried. After serious discussion, it was decided that the only way to obtain the water again was to make the frog laugh. The question now arose as to which animal should begin the performance, and after a heated argument, the pride of place was given to the kookaburra. The kookaburra seated himself on the limb of a tree and with a wicked twinkle in his eye looked straight at the big bloated frog, ruffled his brown feathers, and began to laugh. At first he made a low gurgling sound deep in his throat as though he was smiling to himself, but gradually he raised his voice and laughed louder and louder until the bush re-echoed with the sound of his merriment. The other animals looked on with very serious faces, but the frog gave no sign. He just blinked his eyes and looked as stupid as only a frog can look. The next competitor was a frill lizard. It extended the frill around its throat and puffing out its jaws capered up and down. But there was no humor in the frog. He did not even look at the lizard, and laughter was out of the question. It was then suggested that the dancing of the native companion might tickle the fancy of the frog. So she danced until she was tired, but all of her rhythmic dancing failed to arouse the interest of the frog. The position was very serious, and the Council of Animals was at its wits' end for a reasonable suggestion. In their anxiety to solve the difficulty, they all spoke at once, and the din was indescribable.
Can I try that man?
Animals laughed at the idea, but in despair they agreed to give him a try. The eel then began to wriggle in front of the frog. At first he wriggled slowly, and then faster and faster until his head and tail met, and then he slowed down and wriggled like a snake with the shivers. After a few minutes he changed his position and flopped about like a well-bitten grub on an ant bed. Frog opened his sleepy eyes and his big body quivered. His face relaxed, and at last he burst into a laugh that sounded like rolling thunder. The water poured from his mouth in a flood as he laughed. It filled the deepest rivers and covered the land. It filled the rivers, streams, billabongs, and waterholes. Only the highest mountain peaks were visible, like islands in the sea. Many of the animals were drowned, as the giant frog still continued to laugh. And when the dawn came from the eastern sky, the birds sang a song of welcome to the new flood, a flood of golden sunlight.